Okay, today let's plan the best 5 years of your leadership career. I know, 5-year-long plan for anything can seem intimidating, I totally get it. But if we want to set ourselves for a long-term career success, especially managerial career, this is a time frame we need to start thinking in. Have you ever wondered, looking at the higher-ups in your company, man, this guy's like 5 years older than me and he's already a senior manager or even a director, like how is this even possible? Well, there is a good chance that they approach their career intentionally. It's not on autopilot. So if you just started as a manager, or even if you lead a team for some time and want to level up, I will give you a framework that would include skills you need to develop for managerial role, not just what to learn, but also when is the right time to learn it, and a system to monitor your progress along the way. So if you want for the next 5 years of your career to be different from the last, let's go. Now, what's the point of becoming a manager in the first place? Because there are quite a lot of downsides of the leadership job. It's a high responsibility, which often leads to a higher stress. And also the majority of managers are what is called middle management, which basically means that you're constantly between different powers. And they say things usually break in the middle, meaning that it's not the easiest job in general. But there are positives, of course. Practical ones, leadership job usually has a higher paycheck, and in many cultures you have the status, recognition, and it's a socially acceptable career path. But apart from that, as leaders, we have a higher impact and influence, and we can use it to make a difference in the world, be a force for a change, and generally do what we believe is right. In a nutshell, in the majority of the companies, it's kind of organized like that. You start as a specialist, then you can be promoted to a manager, then to a director, then to a vice president or VP, with of course multiple different levels within each pillar. But what happens is usually when you're getting promoted, no one actually teaches you the leadership role. And the consequence of that is that unprofessional boss that you once had that caused more damage than good and could not even comprehend the mistakes he was making as a leader. That unqualified. We don't want to be this guy, and for that we need to learn. By the way, depending on your starting point as of today, your track may look a little bit different. But remember that everything I mentioned from now on is absolutely necessary. First year, code word leadership foundations. In the first year, you would need to properly transition from managing yourself to managing others. And this is a different way of thinking. Because if previously we are all as specialists focused on how do we deliver as individuals, we need to move to enabling others to deliver. And this mindset shift takes time. Also, in the first year, you will need to learn basic leadership skills. You will need to level up your communication because as a manager, you will need to learn how to convey ideas to your team, together with learning how to represent your team to the outside world of your organization. You will need to learn how to resolve conflicts. It's not good or bad, but it's a mandatory skill for a manager. And you will need to learn how to motivate and engage others. And here I'm talking about the beginner level. We will talk about a more, let's say, advanced version of motivating others later in the video. But for now, the main point is for you to learn how to support your team as a manager, for you to be there for them, for you to be able to ask, what do you need to do your best work? Next, performance management skills. Mandatory program for the first year because you will start setting goals for your team and you will need to know how to do this. Speaking of goal setting, there is the most famous methodology, SMART, which is very good for a foundation. Then after you set the goals for others, you will need to know how to do the performance review. And I'm talking not only how to practically evaluate the goals, but also about how to have performance review conversations with your team members. You will need to learn how to do this constructively, how to provide the feedback. And the final part of this performance management kit is you need to learn how to recognize effort of others and reward them. From general soft skills point of view, there are two main things. The first is active listening. If you will not learn how to actively listen to people in your team, you won't establish a good connection with them. And as a manager, as a leader, you practically won't know what is happening. And the second one is to deliver constructive feedback. It's actually not that easy, and a lot of managers spend years trying to master it and get comfortable with delivering someone a constructive feedback. But this is very important because there is no way you as a leader would avoid that. So learning how to do this should be your focus. Okay, for the second year, your focus as a manager would shift more towards operational excellence and operational efficiency. Here's the idea. When we usually start as managers, we often don't make any changes in our area of responsibility straight away, if that makes sense. So in the beginning, we're rather focused on executing processes that already existed. But the more you gain experience and a certain maturity as a manager, the more you start moving with time from just executing what already existed to changing it and improving it. So for example, if you're responsible for a certain process within your organization, one of the important skills that you can already start acquiring in the second year is process optimization. It means understanding how the process is organized, analyze it, and identify ways for it to be optimized. Next, you will need a data analysis skills because you'll have to evaluate your team's performance, and this evaluation should be data-driven. Also, you will need to acquire project management skills. A work of a manager often implies that you will be participating in some project type of activities, and sometimes you may be even leading those. So basically, you will need to learn how to make things happen within the time frame, within the budget, and with the necessary quality. Sounds simple. In reality, maybe it's not that simple, but my point is, even if at some point you won't be leading the projects yourself, the understanding of how project management works is super important for a leader, because tons of the things that we do in business is basically done on the project basis. So even if you won't lead yourself, really important skill set. Also, second year is a good place to start thinking about strategy and start to develop strategic thinking skill set. You will need strategic thinking for things like, for example, you establish certain goals for your team, but these goals are supposed to be connected to a much bigger and maybe more long-term corporate goals. If before your decision making was rather focused on, let's say, like momentary decisions, so you have an existing process and you make decisions according to that, but you'll need to learn a more complex decision making. How do you make decisions that are affecting your team, or the decisions that are having much long-term implications on things? The next skill to learn is change management, and the importance of it is huge. Just imagine you analyze the process, you decide on a good way to optimize this process. If you won't get a buy-in from your team, if you won't ensure that the new process would actually stick, if you won't take care of all those additional things apart from just making the change in the process, it just won't happen. Change management for me is a little bit like an art of making things happen, of making these changes happen. I cannot count how many times very good initiatives absolutely failed because this change management was not done properly. Soft skills for the second year would be a collaboration, how to promote a collaborative culture in your team, because you see, we're kind of moving from I'm telling you what exactly to do to motivating your team, to empowering your team. And if you will ensure that your team is capable to collaborate with one another effectively, it will bring you a great benefit as a manager. And another soft skill for the second year is one and only emotional intelligence, which, if you ask me, I think everyone should learn and practice. I'm telling you, if you look at any trustworthy list of leadership qualities important in the modern age and modern business, emotional intelligence would be somewhere in top 5, maybe in top 3. I think I had a video on emotional intelligence. If I will find it, I'll link in the description, but don't go and watch it now. First finish this one and then check the other one if you're interested. Okay, year number 3 is a year of strategy and business acumen. On the third year of your leadership career, you need to already properly move from just executing existing things to creating new ones. For that, you will need more advanced strategical thinking. And the first one to learn here is visionary leadership. If you remember, in the first year, we were talking about skill on how to motivate people and how to engage people. And I mentioned that it was a rather basic level. Now, this is the time for advanced one, because now you will need to learn how to inspire people with the bigger ideas and how to lead with a long-term vision, which is a very different level of leadership. Good strategic thinking always comes with the skill of scenario planning. So you'll need to learn how to anticipate different variations of events, let's say, and how to plan accordingly. And you'll need to learn how to do more strategic alignments. And here I mean, if previously, for example, you were connecting a quarterly goals of your department with quarterly or maybe annual goals of your company, now you'll have to connect your work and work of your team with a strategy of your company. It is much bigger and broader concepts and ideas that you will need to have alignment with. Now, next thing that you will need, and for some reason some people are kind of trying to avoid that, but this is very important, is a certain level of business acumen. I mean, of course, we all are doing a job inside a certain department or a function within the company. But here's the thing, at some level of you getting more mature as a leader and you leveling up the career ladder, you will have to face the fact that all these functions and parts of organization are connected with one another. And the higher you get in the ladder, the more of these interconnections you will face and experience. So to do your work properly, you will need to understand not only your work within this department, but have a broader and wider outlook on things. For example, I'm so sorry, but financials at some point of your career, like, it's unavoidable. You have to learn financial basics. At least understanding how budgeting works and maybe basic understanding of financial statements. Your conversation with your management will be very different from the moment you'll actually acquire this knowledge, I promise you. The next is industry knowledge. You'll need to understand what is your company doing for a living, how the industry that your company operates in looks like. It may sound obvious, but let me give you an example. For many years, I worked in IT inside a retail company, and I saw many managers who were so kind of encapsulated in IT and tech and technologies that they couldn't be bothered to learn how retail operates, how e-com operates, how this whole world is working. So although they knew their work well, they could not participate in any of the conversations above that on a level, okay, why do we have this part of IT? How does this serve to the main purpose of the business, which is still retail or e-com or anything else? So as it is with financials, at a certain level of maturity, having an industry knowledge is absolutely mandatory. Continuing around the same lines, you will need to learn cross-functional collaboration. And here first you would need to even understand how different parts of organization are interacting with one another. And to effectively collaborate across departments, you also need to learn how to communicate cross departments. And the biggest trick here is it's very easy to forget that other departments have their own objectives, their own goals for their function that you may have no idea about. And sometimes it is much easier to find a common ground with someone who is maybe a different, team, but still a part of the same function. If you're from IT, they're from IT. If you're from operations, they're from operations. Then for someone from marketing to find a common ground with someone from operations. It is, I would say, a more advanced way of communicating because you have to actually collaborate with someone and the common ground for that is not that obvious or not that easy to find. It requires a lot of effort. The soft skills for the third year would be, as I've already mentioned, advanced communication, but also I would say at that point you will need to learn how to, let's say, get comfortable with a certain level of ambiguity. I mean, somewhere there you will already need to accept that a certain level of unpredictability will be part of your job and it's absolutely unavoidable. And also that there are always so much information and so many choices around you, especially as a leader. So you'll need to learn how to navigate in this constant buzzing chaos around you. You will just accept at that point that it won't go away. And the only thing you need to do is to train yourself on how to still navigate through all of that. Now, if you started with just being promoted to a manager now, meaning like 2.5 or 3 years, is, if you ask me, a good moment for you to get promoted. It is very different in different industries, in different countries, and in different companies in general, because in startups and scale-ups, you usually get promotions much faster, and in the big established corporates, things are happening slower. But if I take as a reference like an average standard already established corporate, I would say 2.5, 3 years is already a good point for you to talk to your manager, discuss what are the career opportunities, and maybe looking at getting promoted already as a manager to the next step. Okay, year number 4, and this I would call a year of visibility. And what I mean by that is to start doing the public speaking. Hold on, don't turn this video off just yet. At some point of your leadership career, public speaking, like, it's not optional at some point. You just have to learn how to do it. And apart from so many different ways how this skill is actually helpful in real life, apart from work, public speaking helps you share your insights, share what you want to share effectively, which increases your efficiency as a leader. And also it provides you a good exposure in the company. So through that, you actually start developing your professional brand. And another skill you will need to learn at that point is, I would call it a content creation. And by that I mean doing presentations inside a company, writing articles for your LinkedIn page or somewhere outside the organization. And I'm talking about actually sharing your experience and, let's say, giving back to a community of experts that work with you. It is still very, I would say, underrated part of something that you can do as a leader, but being more visible to the world will give you more exposure, will help you develop your personal brand. So basically people would start knowing who you are, what are you in general about. And it's just a good thing for you to do sometimes. It helps systemize your experience. And in the end, it's just a nice and good thing to do to others. This year, you would need to double click on succession planning, because at this point, there is already a chance that maybe you would have someone, not just individual contributors below you, right? You may have already like a team lead below you who may start managing others. And this is where an absolutely different game starts. Because if before you were focusing as a manager on telling people what to do, when you start managing managers, you teach them how to think instead of telling them what to do. By the way, this is a very fundamental difference between, for example, managerial and director skill set, but that's a topic for maybe another video. From tracking the performance of your team, you will need to move to identifying their potential, let's say. You will need to have successors in your team at that point, which requires for you to do a certain talent assessment. And from that, you would be able to identify who from your team you would wanna, let's say, develop as a future leaders who has this potential in them. Also, this is a good year for you to become a buddy to someone, or maybe kind of start mentoring someone, because like the biggest thing it does for you, apart from helper's rush, this is such a helpful revision of your experience and your knowledge. One of the best things that you can do, I would say, to systemize your knowledge and experience as a manager. Finally, year number 5. I don't know how to call this. I want to call it a year of politics, but I'm like low-key scared to discourage you. Like, I have a feeling that politics in a work sense, in any sense, has a little bit of a negative connotation. I know so many people who are saying, you know, like, I can do my work, I can develop my career, but when it comes to politics, I'm not involved. I'm not getting involved into the politics. Although the work politics is as simple as you knowing what you want to achieve, who are the people who can help you with that, and who are the people who can prevent you from achieving that. It's a separate big topic, but what I want to say for this video is I encourage you to stop thinking about politics as about something dirty or about something that you should never get involved in, because to a certain extent, and there is a healthy, you know, like reasonable extent of that, it is a part of a leadership job, and this is all right, it's okay. So your first skill for year number 5 is to get politically savvy, meaning to learn how to maneuver complicated and complex situations where you have a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people with different different interests. So being able to manage these situations, still achieve what you want, and let's say keep decent relationship with everyone is a very important leadership skill. Apart from that, this is a year of learning executive communications. What I mean by that? First, you will need to understand how your directors or any higher ups think. Because usually we are so into our day-to-day work, like the things that we together with our team are actually doing. And it's sometimes a little bit hard to accept that the directors, they don't care about any of the operational processes that we do day by day. They care about the results. They care about the finances. They care about the strategy. They just think on a different level of abstraction, let's say. And what you can learn is how to split this operational side of work that is very important to you but less important to them from, let's say, the outcome and the purpose of what you together with your team do that would actually matter to them. Learn how to get confident with your leadership and under pressure. A lot of managers, they're not really an empathetic leaders, and sometimes they can be very intense, sometimes they can be quite pushy. So having a skill of being able to operate and still do everything that needs to be done in their presence is important. Also, in some cultures and some countries, people are getting intimidated by the higher ups easier, and this is also a thing that you just need to learn how to control and manage. Being confident with your leadership sometimes is also kind of called executive presence, which I have also a video about that, I will link in the description, but in a nutshell, executive presence is a little bit of a BS term that no one actually knows what specifically means, and people often use to make biased decisions. So I will not tell you to get the executive presence. I would rather tell you get comfortable in the presence of your management, be able to tolerate a high pressure of these discussions. Also, the higher you get, the more you would need to influence others. And at that point, it's not just your team or your peers or even your management, it's managers of other departments and other functions within your company. Sometimes if you work with vendors, it can actually be in external companies, not within your company. A skill to be able to influence people in the right way is sometimes what separates a successful leader from unsuccessful leader. Finally, you will need to strengthen the relationship with your peer leaders, with leaders on your level in other parts of organization. Because here's the thing, the higher you get, the smaller the number of people who are doing the same thing as you do. There is only one CEO in the company, right? Can you imagine how tough and lonely and emotionally challenging it would be if you don't even have anyone to share your struggles on your step of the journey with someone? That's why CEOs often talk to one another quite a lot, because it actually gets a little bit lonely up there. So I would say try to build good relationship with your peer leaders, because this would be your way to, in a way, share your struggles with someone else. And maybe you will support each other while growing and climbing the career ladder further on. Now, there are 3 things that are not year specific. So they are the things that you should do all across this 5-year long career journey of yours. And the first one is networking. Yes, I know it's not easy, especially if you've never done that before, but this is what I want to focus you on. I encourage you to network with managers who are one step above you right now. So for example, if you just became a manager, network with someone who is already managing a team for a year or 2 years maybe, because this is how you would constantly see what is the next step for you, what are the challenges, what is interesting on the next step. Because this is how, first, you will know what's yet to come for you, and second, it's an easy way to get an advice of someone who were in your position just recently and they still remember all of the challenges that you are now going through. So their advice would be the most valuable for you. Second ongoing thing is working on your soft skills. And here I want to highlight, although I provided you a few options of the soft skills, what to develop for each year, there are multiple, let's say, levels of depth and how advanced you can get with any of those. So if you spend some time learning emotional intelligence intelligence, don't abandon it. This is a skill set that I encourage you to still keep working on and keep developing all throughout your career. And ongoing thing number 3 is to have a conversation with your management about your career goals. You shouldn't wait for them to guess that you want a promotion. You should constantly have conversations about where are you at right now, what is needed for your function, for your role, for your company, for you to get promoted to the next level. You should initiate these conversations and in the end get an understanding what is needed for you to get promoted. This is another thing that I highly encourage you to do, to take an ownership of your career progression. Find out what it takes and keep everyone accountable, including yourself, of course. Now, this was quite a long-term plan. I mean, 5 years is not a walk in the park. What I'm going to give you is a system to actually monitor how are you progressing within this 5-year time frame. And for that, you would need to open your calendars and set 2 reminders. Number 1, every 6 months, usually in the middle of the year and closer to the end of the year, you would need to accumulate a feedback on yourself. If you don't do it yet, or if your company doesn't have this as a default procedure, you'll need to start doing it yourself. Because one of the best ways for us to learn about ourselves at work, especially in a leadership position, especially the higher, let's say, you get in a career ladder, it's to actively request an anonymous feedback from your team, from your peers, and from your manager. Having a feedback requests every 6 months is an absolute standard, especially if you're in the beginning of your leadership career. And the biggest value of that is that you will actually get other people's opinion on your skills, your qualities, your strengths, and things that you should work on. Everyone would tell you that you would need to learn how to constructively accept the criticism without getting pissed. I'm telling you, it depends on what kind of person you are. A lot of people, I get pissed either way. It is fine. We just process it internally and still get the constructive part from this feedback. And the second thing, I would ask you to do an annual review. Prior to this annual review, maybe 1 month in advance, gather the feedback, collect everything, then book 1 solid day to do a proper check-in with yourself and where you're standing. So here are the questions that you need to ask yourself. How are you progressing compared to this 5-year-long track? What is lacking? What do you think you're doing good? What do you think you can do better? What is the feedback telling you? Are you happy with your career development, with the role, with the position? Are you happy with the company that you're currently in? And the last one, maybe the most important one, is it fun for you? Is this leadership journey feels like a feel-good career to you or not anymore? I usually actually book a proper day off. I remove all the distractions, I collect all the information that I have, and I do all these exercises. I write, I think, I reflect, and it very much helps me to set myself for a good success for the next year, and even understand if I need to change something or everything is going well. By the way, if you already manage people and you think about yourself as an introverted person, check out my video on how to survive as a manager introvert. I will see you there.